Hello everyone, Sandriak here. So in today's video, I want to talk everything lore-wise regarding Raiden Shogun, and this is going to be a two-part video. For the next part, I'll talk about everything lore-wise regarding Scaramouche. So of course, before we get started, this is going to be the last day where I am uploading videos on a daily basis. For the most frequency I'll be looking at is 2 videos a week, and even if that's probably not going to be the case for most of the time because of schoolwork starting in September. So with that said, enjoy the video and have a great 2.1. Of course, if you still want to enter for my Baal giveaway, the video is linked in the description below. With that said, let's get started. So for this video, I want to answer 2 major questions regarding Raiden Shogun. The first one is why the Vision Hunt decree in the first case, and the second one is the current Raiden Shogun the real Raiden Shogun? And for these 2 answers, I'll give the answers here right now, but I'll do it very briefly. I'll go into details later. So why the Vision Hunt decree? For the eternal peace of Inazuma, basically she's doing it out of the interest of the Inazuma people. The way she's doing it is sort of like a dictatorship, but overall it's for the good of the Inazuma people. And is the current Raiden Shogun the real one? The answer is yes and no at the same time. The one that we see during most of the time is actually not the real one. The real one is in her dimension. So if that explains, and depending on exactly how MiHoYo defines her dimension and the one outside her dimension, it could be seen as either one of her clones is acting in her place outside her dimensions, whereas in her dimension she is the real Raiden Shogun. Or if they can explain another way, it could go something like she split some parts of herself to sort of reform into the body of her own to act out her will outside her dimensions in Inazuma, whereas the other half of Raiden Shogun stayed within her dimensions. So it could be either one person split into 2 or 2 different person of the same person, if that makes sense. So with that said, let's get started into the actual details on why I think these 2 are the answers to these 2 questions. So to answer these 2 questions, we must first take a look at Baal's design philosophy. I know I covered this in another video titled there might be 2 archons in Inazuma. However, the thing with that is that more footage of Baal has been shown, and with the more footage shown and also some more digging into the old footage, we can find way more detail into her design philosophy. The first one is that Baal took his heavy inspiration from 3 different sources. Previously, we have only identified 2, but with the addition of more and more of her resources, we can now identify the 3rd source. The first one, of course, is the Lesser Key of the Solomon, which is the list of names where all the archons come from. In this case, Baal's name is King Baal, spelled with a AE instead of a AA. Correspondingly, Count Morax, King Paimon, Duke Barbados are all names from this book as well. On top of that, if you're curious, King Paimon is supposed to know everything, and yeah, so hashtag Paimon final boss. So with that said, the second source of her design philosophy comes from Japanese mythology, the god of thunder / lightning, as well as and the 3rd source is various figures in Chinese and Japanese variation of Buddhism. So that's the new one that's recently being added. So let's look at them side by side, one by one. So let's start with the Lesser Key of Solomon. Lesser Key of Solomon, King Baal normally holds an electrical orb in his left hand and walks on lightning. He is also the god of lightning and thunder within that pantheon, so it makes sense that Raiden is using his name. And of course, to avoid probably copyright or something, sometimes they alter the spelling a little bit. Other names like Andurius, and also so Andurius, both in Norse, his name is also spelled a little differently to the Lesser Key of Solomon version of that name. So now let's move on to the second source, the Japanese culture side. So Baal's original figure is Takemi Kazuchi. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. He is the god of thunder, lightning, swords, blades, bows, arrows, god of war, god of martial arts, and the manifestation of the spirit of the sword itself. So technically speaking, if that is also the last part, the manifestation of the spirit of the sword itself, if MiHoYo is also inheriting over that characteristic, then it means that Baal is not having the Booba sword. Baal is the Booba sword in that case. So the Booba sword she's pointing out is her real identity if that ends up being the case. Now finally, because I've already gone through these two in the previous video, so this one, the focus here is on the Buddhism parts, and there are a lot of references between Baal, Inazuma, and Buddhism. So let's start with the statue of 100 eyes and 1,000 hands, or 1,000 hand, or 1,000 eyes and 100 hand, I forgot exactly. But in Chinese and Japanese Buddhism, and also I think in some Hindu version of Buddhism, there are multiple versions of this being's existence, and or at least there are existent variations of a being with 1,000 hands, or like a large number of hands. So the one I want to reference here is the name here. Also, it's the Hinduism below. I do not want to pronounce this name because I do not know how to pronounce it. So she is one of the more worshipped deity in Buddhism, at least in China and Japan, mainly because her normal duty within the Buddhism deity pantheon is to sort of help people through their hard times. So this is why she is more worshipped sort of as a very kind goddess in most cases. Now on top of that, even though this is not shown in English, but in the Chinese original text during Bao's character description and kit description, a lot of jargons that are specifically only used in Buddhism are used here. Words like Jingtu, which means Euthymia, this word meaning, I do not know what it exactly means, but referring to evil, this word referring to powerful light, and this word referring to annihilation. These are all specific jargons only used in Buddhism in Chinese, and these are all used here, making another link between Buddhism and Inazuma and Bao. Furthermore, as we first enter Bao's dimension in 2.0 during the Bao fight, and on top of that, Bao is also in this position during her PV, which was put online not long ago. So for these two versions, Bao are both sitting in a very specific position. To describe exactly, she has one leg crossed while the other one is just dangling downwards. Now, another person that has been known to sit in this position very specifically is a Buddha, and she got famous for sitting in this position. So this is her name. Technically, Terra here means green, and the reason why she sits in this position is because she is always willing to stand up to help people in need, and this is why she's always having one leg dangling so she can stand up faster, technically, if that makes sense. And I believe this leads nicely into Bao's intention behind the vision hunt of potentially helping people. A few more things to move on before we exactly go into Bao's intention. There is one more link that is sort of more hidden but can still be dug out. So in the title of Genshin's 2.0, the official English translation is called the Immovable God and the Eternal Eumystia, and again, the translation here means loss of information. In Chinese, if you read the first part, the Immovable God, out loud, it actually sounds very similar to the title of this deity from Buddhism. And through his appearance and duty, we can clearly draw a parallel between his situation and Bao's intention behind the vision hunt. So in this deity's name, the immovable symbolizes his dedication to kindness and helping people, which can never be stopped or moved. However, one very interesting about him, he always looks angry, or at least he always is angry, one of the two. But overall, whenever you see him in any sort of portrayal, his face is always mad and angry. And this is actually a sign of his kindness because of, like Christianity, Buddhism always talks about people sinning and stuff like that. So he's always mad that because there's always someone sinning overall. So which is why he's always mad, because he wants everyone to be good and he wants the best out of everyone, so everyone don't have to go to hell afterwards. So as a result, his duty is actually to scare off the evil spirits and guide monks or just casual believers in their meditation session, as well as any other rituals they are performing. His role is more serving as a guidance as well as the same time as a bodyguard against evil spirits, if that makes sense. So clearly this draws a parallel to Bao. I mean, she's probably one of the most cold-hearted person we have seen so far. I mean, minus some of the very sketchy people we've met here and there. But among the main characters, she is definitely the most cold-hearted we have seen so far. I mean, she even offered to leave us inside her statue or split us into two pieces. It was kind of take one of the two. However, even though this is never shown on screen, but Bao's voice becomes much more calmer and kinder when we talk to her for the second time inside her dimension. For reference, here is clip between the voice before and the voice behind. Now the voice before is her voice in the open world, and the voice behind is the voice when she is in her own dimension. She almost sounds like Yae Miko in that dimension. So this finally explains the two archon situation. So yes, there are two of them, but there can be two descriptions for that. So they are both the same person. They can either be one of them, the Baal outside the Baal's dimension, the Baal, the physical manifestation of Baal inside the city of Inazuma, could be a clone of the Baal who is actually sitting in her dimension at the moment, or it could be Baal split herself into two pieces, where the cold-hearted piece is the one that is governing Inazuma, whereas her real self is the other piece is sitting behind in her own dimension. So overall, it's clear that whether it's two pieces or her clones, overall it's clear that the Baal that is cold-hearted acts out to achieve the goal of eternity, whereas the real Baal, or the more inner Baal, sits inside her dimension to avoid corrosion. This is exactly why she is doing this. So now let's move on to the reason behind the statue and the vision hunt degree. So in short, it is to achieve her euthymia, as I've explained before, but it's not exactly hers. It's more like her gift and promise to the people of Inazuma. Within the description of the Vajrata and Mist gemstone, which is the ascension material for electoral characters at the highest rarity, we can clearly see one sentence: it once promised its people a dream, the never-changing eternity. So this means she is actually doing this for her people, but not for herself, even though she is acting harsh. So this, together with Baal's story teaser, we can conclude that Raiden lost most of her friends to her godhood, from her initially coming to power around 2,000 years ago to the conflict that led to the destruction of Korea 500 years ago. She lost almost all the friends that are close to her. As a result, Baal decided to protect her people, which is why she is a big fan of the idea of eternity. So she decided to protect her people, the people of Inazuma, at all cost. So in turn, she left her real self inside her dimension to avoid the effects of corrosion. Now, of course, how the other two archons avoid this: Venti just sleeps all day. Actually, Venti takes very frequent naps that last a few hundred to 1,000 years, give or take. And in Zhongli's case, he just retired recently to avoid this problem. So in Bao's case, he did this by keeping herself within her own dimension while she formed a puppet or a clone or a part of herself. We still don't know exactly how to explain this yet, but a version of her is out there acting out the Vision Hunt decree, while the real her is sitting inside her own dimension. And the final goal of the Vision Hunt decree was to construct the statue into like a massive weaponry, basically a nuclear weapon, and she can protect the people of Inazuma this way. On top of that, there is there's one more reference that's proves this. On top, within Bao's official landscape poster, if you look really closely on the top, there is a very small line that is probably written out in about 5 to 10 font size font, and the English one reads as to the ephemeral world and abide in the unchanging eternity. And this again confirms the fact that Baal is going after eternity, and she is sitting sort of in her own bubble at the time. So that's all I have for you for this video. In the next video, I'll cover Scaramouche, exactly who he is and what are his intentions. So thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.